Hello and welcome to Good Morning UK Have Your Say, a Force for Good's mid-morning show coming to you live from our Nerve Centre here in the heart of the great British city of Glasgow with me, your host, Alistair McConnachie. And goodness me, today we have got a lot to speak about, so please do send in your comments and please do tell us what you think about the nationwide elections which occurred last week. There's certainly some changes going on and there's things that need to be spoken about. Good to see Frankie coming in already, and good morning, Morwena. All right, Tommy, hope you're well, and Sandra, good. I'd like folk to send in what their thoughts are. Okay, so our question to you this morning is whether the future of the United Kingdom, what's going to happen over the next 5 years? That's a big question, obviously, but it's one that we all need to be considering. Nice to see Catherine in and Pauline as well, and always great to have Debbie here. Alan, good morning to you. And Alan, how are you this morning, Alan? Craig and Maggie and also Walter there. Now, this is, of course, our show. Good Morning UK Have Your Say. Please do send in your comments. And I am your host, Alistair McConnachie, Director of A Force for Good. This is our 18th morning show. And we love doing this. And this is a great opportunity to talk about what's happening apart from the mainstream media. You know, this is the sort of thing you're not going to see on Good Morning Britain or any other of these shows that just completely promote negativity and anti-Britishness, because we are here, we love the United Kingdom, we're British and we want to stay together and we want to give a platform to as many people as possible. Now, coming up at the top of the hour, we have an interview with our AFFG man called Max Dunbar. You've seen him before. He's always a great guest on our show, and people enjoy listening to what he's got to say. And he's going to be giving us his opinion on the election as well. And of course, as you know, as many of you know, I was also a candidate at the election, and I'll be talking briefly about that as well. So hang on for that, because I know a lot of people will be interested. Good morning, Gina and Des and Sheila. Sheila says businesses will leave Scotland because of the uncertainty. The SNP will destroy Scotland. Well, there are certainly worries about that, aren't there, Sheila? There was bad news this morning about a business leaving Scotland. McVitie's, of course, leaving Glasgow, but I don't know the full story behind that and the extent to which that might be tied in with what's happening in the wider picture. But certainly, how can you possibly set up a business in Scotland if you don't even know whether or not you're going to have a trading border with the rest of the United Kingdom in 2 or 3 years' time? It's simply not a feasible option. And the SNP don't seem to realise that, and if they do realise that, then they simply don't care. But what a time to try to be running a business that trades largely with the rest of the United Kingdom. What a time to be doing it, because you simply can't be expected to do so in Scotland at the present moment when it's up in the air in such a way. And this is one of the big problems about Scottish nationalism, is it simply creates a context of uncertainty, economic uncertainty, not just for businesses but for homeowners as well. Good morning, Robert. Thanks for all the good work that you do for us. And to Ryan, always good to see Ryan from the West Riding of Yorkshire. What were the results like in your area of the country, Ryan? Are people pleased or unhappy with them? Give us your thoughts there. Catherine says, one main party for all of Britain and Scotland working with each other. That's quite a big ask these days, isn't it? I know some people tried that in the sense of trying to bring parties together at the Scottish election. Craig's similarly says Scotland needs one unionist party. It sounds good on paper. It sounds good on paper. Whether it could be done in reality is another question. Ian, good morning to the wonderful people of this great country of the UK. Pauline says the SNP winning one extra seat was not a great success for them. This one seat, despite the TV coverage that Sturgeon got. Her blanket main channel coverage was wrong, and yet she did not get the result that she wanted. Well, that's a good point, because Sturgeon had everything going for her. I mean, she had basically her daily show almost on the BBC, where she would stand up and she would masquerade as the great leader, and she would tell us how she had everything under control, and the BBC wouldn't even allow proper discussion and questioning of what she was saying. So she had her own show, basically to promote her own face, and that's one of the reasons that she managed to hold steady, basically hold steady. Now, she got one extra seat. They wanted to have a governing majority. Now, for the SNP to have a governing majority, that means that they would have to have 65 seats. Now, they fell one short of that. They had 64 seats. So, as a party, they did not achieve the governing majority that they wanted. But, of course, when you add on the 8 seats of the Scottish Cabbage Party, otherwise known as the Scottish Green Party, who are separatists to the core, then they do have a governing majority for separation by 72 to 57. So it's unfortunate in that sense, but it's interesting that as a party the SNP did not move forward in any significant sense, even though everything was going for them at this election, even though they had all the publicity and they had essentially the mass media hyping them constantly. Colin says Angela says that she hates the SNP, and Colin says cancel the British Broadcasting Corporation. Well, indeed, some people have been doing things like that, haven't they? In the sense of Alan's saying, why doesn't England stop all the funding to Scotland for a couple of years and see how the SNP would get on under independence? The people would then know what would happen. You're not the first to come up with that idea, Alan. It's not likely to happen, though. Ryan's coming back from the West Riding saying, generally speaking, the Conservative Party made gains in the council elections in West Yorkshire, but Labour managed to ascertain the newly founded and hideous Metro Mayorship of West Yorkshire Combined Authority. West Yorkshire Combined Authority. That's such an unattractive, quangoish name, isn't it? Richard says, the result shows how entrenched the pro-independence vote is after all the SNP failures and scandals. Therefore, passion for Britain must be fired up to turn people to the Unionist side. That's a very good point, Richard, and you make that point constantly and very well, that we need to turn up the passion. And talking about the entrenched vote, right, there was this shows you how entrenched it is. There was a candidate in Dundee, one of the Dundee constituencies, called Joe Fitzpatrick, and he was the SNP's public health, inverted commas, minister, for which he was getting a massive salary, as they all do. When they promote themselves to minister, they get an extra 40,000 a year, or they're at 30,000 a year. So it's a good thing to get ministerialship in the SNP, paid for by the British taxpayer. Anyway, this Joe Fitzpatrick, he got sacked from his role because he wasn't doing his job properly, basically. And the constituency of Dundee is the worst for drug deaths in the United Kingdom. And he got re-elected again in that constituency. Okay, the man who got sacked from the SNP SNP's ministerialship, gets re-elected in Dundee, even though his constituency is the worst for drug deaths under the SNP. So that just shows that there's an awful lot of entrenchment there, and a lot of people who simply don't care what the record of the SNP is. They'll vote for the SNP anyway. I thought that was particularly sad. That was one of the most annoying and upsetting results, was him getting back in after the mess that he's made of the situation. But it just shows you that very often we are stuck with, as Richard put it, just that entrenched vote that doesn't actually care about who their SNP person is as long as they get elected. Samuel's hoping that the Union will continue. Well, the Union is safe, and that's just what I want to basically talk very briefly about. Firstly, did tactical voting make a difference? Yes, it did make a difference. Jackie Baillie got back in as a consequence of Tories voting for her, and probably Liberal Democrats as well. The Nationalists, of course, were tactically voting as well, in the sense that, unfortunately, Angus Robertson got in Edinburgh Central, which is bad, actually. That was one of the worst results, was Angus Robertson getting back in, because he's angling to be the next leader of the SNP, and he represents the kind of crazy wing of the SNP. He's somebody who is going to really push for a second referendum. He's extremely anti-British, extremely anti-United Kingdom, and he just wants to bring the tempo down upon his head for whatever reasons that may have got into his past that he wants to do that. But he is a real bad egg, as we've been saying all the time. But Angus Robertson, unfortunately, got back into Holyrood. He had been an MP, of course. He got thrown out of that job, but he found his way back in Edinburgh Central. So that's bad news for Britain, that man is in a position of public power again. But good to see Jackie Baillie getting back. Jackson Carlaw was also probably a beneficiary of tactical voting in Eastwood, and it really only in those 3 or 4 constituencies did tactical voting make a big difference, but it did make a difference. And so if you can do it, it's often something that should be done, if you don't mind holding your nose. Andrew says, what's your thoughts on Angus Robertson taking the oath in German? Well, my first thought is extremely puzzling. Why would he be doing that? I mean, he's not an ethnic German that I'm aware of. You know, that's like, why would you do that? That's like baffling, unless he wants to simply try to pretend that he is, unless he wants to pretend, for example, that, you know, he's a foreigner or he's European or something like that. Maybe that's what it is. He's maybe trying to big up the European angle. I don't know. Yeah, Marjorie says she was so disappointed to see Angus Robertson back. We all were, Marjorie, absolutely. Yeah. So apparently somebody's just saying there that Angus Robertson's mother is German. Well, okay, that would explain why he's got a German connection then. But still, why does he want to take his oath in German? It's not like German's even a language of Britain, so it's obviously just to try to be different and to try to appeal to the European citizens, which are still allowed a vote under the Scottish franchise. And To what extent did they swing the balance? To what extent did 16-year-olds make a difference? To what extent did the refugee vote, which are recently enfranchised as well? Don't know. Have not seen those figures, but would be very interested if anybody has those figures to send them to us, just so that we can see if those newly enfranchised groups made any kind of difference, or were their votes just split normally, or were they balanced and biased one way or another. Certainly the SNP attempts to gerrymander the franchise as much as it possibly can in order to ensure that it can pander to certain groups and get their vote. Does it work or not? I haven't seen the figures. Richard says the SNP are Euro nationalists. And have they started to go around the European countries in order to try to gain support for a second referendum? Not quite yet, but no doubt they'll do so, and they'll try to pretend that they are great internationalists. Well, do you know what, Ryan? You're so true. It's all about devolution. It's devolution which is failing, and which ought to be consigned to history, or at least done properly. Devolution was simply about British state power being exercised at local levels in order, theoretically, to make it more attractive to the local people. It was never about setting up alternative forms of government which would conflict with and try to break away from the centre. It was about trying to make the centre and the outlying areas work more closely in harmony. It wasn't about trying to divide them all up against each other, which is the way that it's gone, and which is, of course, is a danger that devolution can go. You know, it can go the wrong way if you're not careful. And certainly the British governments that have been in charge since 1999 have not been careful. They have not tended the United Kingdom with the care and consideration that it should have been. They have not looked at devolution as a way of strengthening the United Kingdom. They've allowed devolution to be co-opted by the enemies of the British state in order to promote their own either party advantage or national advantage. And that's so in Wales as well, where you've got Mark Drakeford really pushing against almost like being a Welsh nationalist, even though he's a member of the Labour Party. He's doing that in order to promote the advantage of the Labour Party. And how on earth did that lot get re-elected? Isn't it just that it does? Sometimes it makes you despair on those matters. What's this? Why don't you and George Galloway hook up and fight them together? Get on his talk show. I'd be happy to go on his talk show, Mark. Absolutely. I've never met the man. They perhaps didn't do as well as they had wanted to do, All for Unity. I don't know if they had the media profile really outside of social media. I don't know to what extent they were actually known about. Certainly the mass media was keeping the lid on them. But I know that the guys who were involved in it did the best that they could. That was for certain. And they had a good idea there, the idea of Unionists uniting. Good old Frankie, Scottish and British. Folks, some good points there that are coming in. Now, one of the commentators that I saw, and it was Andrew Neil, and he made a very good point, and I'm just going to bring this out here. And it was like what Pauline was saying basically earlier in the programme, is that she had everything going for them, including the fact that millions of leaflets and much propaganda was put about, basically making no mention of independence, as Andrew Neil points out here in his article in the Daily Mail on May the 10th. And of course, once people voted for her and voted for the SNP, then, goodness me, their vote was all about independence. And she now claims that because it was in her manifesto that she was going to advocate for a second referendum, then if she is forbidden a second referendum, then that is somehow, a democratic injustice. Because it was in her manifesto that she was wanting that, she seems to think that it has to happen now, that the people have voted for a second referendum. Well, I'll tell you something else that was in the SNP manifesto. Getting rid of Trident and the submarines, okay? So are you saying now that all the submarines and that Trident all has to go simply because it was in the SNP manifesto, which they happened to win? No, of course not, because these are not competencies that the SNP has within the United Kingdom, okay? And demanding a second referendum is not a competency that the SNP has either within the United Kingdom. So you can write whatever you want into your manifesto, but that doesn't mean that it should happen just because you got elected. You have to see, what's the context? Is it doable? Are you able to do it? And of course it's not. It's ultra vires. It's outside their competency. Completely outside their competency. What's this? Dave says regional assemblies were introduced by Blair at the behest of the EU in advance of when full integration was. For Westminster. Yes, I've heard of that. The idea that devolution was part of an EU plot is what Dave is saying, and that might be possible. I don't know. Now that we're out the EU, though, we can still try to get it working properly if we have a government that has got the imagination to continue to hold the United Kingdom together. Now, in 5 minutes at the top of the hour, we're going to have our guest, who is Max Dunbar, who is our head of security for AFFG, and we're going to talk about his views on what's happened in the election, and we'll also mention actually the Union Day celebration, because Max was behind organising some of that as well. So I'll ask him how he thought that day went, and thank you to everybody who came out. That was on Saturday the 1st of May. Now, on this day, today is the 12th of May, okay? And so we always have an on this day in British history moment. So what happened on this day, on the 12th of May? Now, listen carefully, folks, because what I say here, I'm going to ask you a question on, and the winner will get this amazing tin of Union Jack jelly beans, a Union Jack tin with 50 different types of jelly beans. So that will be coming up right now. Now, on this day in British history, on the 12th of May, back in 1820, a woman was born whose life has come to embody the British ideal of service to others, and that was Florence Nightingale. Was born on this day, on the 12th of May in 1820, and the 12th of May worldwide is considered International Nurses Day as a consequence of her birth. And she was born in Italy, in a place, would you believe, called Florence. So that's why she gets her name, Florence Nightingale. And she's generally recognised as the founder of modern nursing. And she became famous initially for her contribution during the Crimean War, when her staff of women volunteers went out to administer to the wounded. And it was during that war that she was able to start to institutionalise the practice of nursing, especially when she came back and established the Nightingale Training School of Nurses at St Thomas's Hospital, which is now part of King's College London. So she passed away on the 13th of August in 1910, aged 90, in London. And as I say, she was born on this day, 12th of May, which is International Nurses' Day, in Florence in Italy. And something else which occurred on this day as well, on the 12th of May in 1937, was the coronation of George VI. And we've got this amazing thing in our collection here in the office, the Souvenir Coronation Songbook, National Airs of the Empire. And that was released to mark the coronation of George the Sixth on this day in 1937. And of course he married Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon, whom we came to know as the Queen Mother, the mother of Queen Elizabeth. And I was just looking at this, looking at some of the songs that are here, what they've chosen as national airs of the Empire. Everything from the British Grenadiers to Hearts of Oak to The Campbells Are Coming, which is not one that I know, but that's a Scottish one, to 100 Pipers and Awe, to March of the Men of Harlech, to Charlie Is My Darling, to Ye Banks and Braes, to The Sweet Lass of Richmond Hill, The Last Rose of Summer, John Peel, Scots Wha with Wallace Bled, Come Lassies and Lads, The Last Rose of Summer. And just reading here from the introduction, I like this bit. You who are in the furthermost portions of the Empire, when you sing these melodies, you'll find your memories drifting back to the banks and braes of bonny Scotland and the flowered hedges of English lanes. You will hear the notes of the harp in your own Erin and the deep, rich voices that resound amid the valleys of Wales. You will know that we here at home in Britain are also singing these songs that are so part and parcel of the race, and you will know that this bond is so real and so sincere. And it continues in that vein. For many long centuries, these songs have been sung by the British people, and may it be that a stronger and more prepared empire retains this heritage of music for many more centuries to come. Well, completely concur with that sentiment. Now, the question which I'm going to ask, and please can you send in your answer to this email, contact@aforceforgood.uk. Which town in Italy was Florence Nightingale born in? That's a fairly easy question. So send in your answers to that question. Now, coming up in a couple of minutes will be our guest. I see that he's in the waiting room at the moment, and we'll be talking to Max. Now, many of you actually already know as well that I was a candidate at the Scottish election, and I stood for a party that I established back in 2003 called Independent Green Voice. And we had 5 candidates standing, and we actually did fairly well. And Max was one of the candidates as well. So we'll talk about that with Max. Now, I see Max is in the waiting room. Now, he's actually in the AFFG studio. So we'll bring in Max right now.
Hello, Alistair.
Good morning, Max.
Morning, Alistair.
Yeah, good to see you.
I enjoyed your AFFG coffee, by the way. It was very
good. And the AFFG Jaffa
Always
cakes.
just the right brew, just right.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we try to make our guests as comfortable as possible here when they come round to our studio. Now, Max, you're looking very well this morning. You've had a good couple of weeks, especially with the AFFG event that you helped to arrange back on Saturday the 1st of May when we had about 50 people in George Square. What were your thoughts about that? Because you were one of the main organisers for that.
Well, I think that was one of the best turnouts that we had, and also the organisation of it went very smoothly. All our equipment was tip-top. We had the more powerful PA system, which was very effective, and a very good show of flags. And the police liaison was first class. We didn't have any problems at all with the opposition. There were relatively few opposition. I believe the number was around about 70 people attended it. There had been another event prior to theirs in the same place, and probably some of the people who were at that event stayed on, possibly out of curiosity for the following event. So it was fairly low key, to be honest, by their standards. They had a very powerful PA system, much more powerful than ours, but it didn't really interfere with our activities and what we had to say. And to be honest, most of our talk was directed more towards our supporters rather than competing directly with people on the other side of the square. So there was really no friction at all, to be honest. And the police were very happy with the way things went, I know that. And they did have mounted police there, but there was absolutely no need for them. They looked good, but there was absolutely no need for them as it turned out, although you never quite know in advance, of course. So overall, the event went extremely well. It's all went according to time, and I think I would guess that most of the people who attended and supported us were pleased with the way that it went. We've obviously got a track record of doing these events or productions, or whatever you want to call them. So we have some experience, and that engenders confidence, of course, because we're reliable. What we say we'll do, we do. And if there are any changes or alterations, we let people know, including the police, of course. So overall, I was very happy with this, and I think I would guess most of our supporters were as well.
Yes, absolutely. And as you say, we have this track record now, and we have a great team around us. We've got a team of marshals who do a tremendous job in just helping to organise the setup of it, to keep everybody happy, to guide people, to look out for things, to help the police where necessary, with advice and so on and so forth. So we've got it really well organised, and so anybody that wants to come along, they know that this is an extremely professionally done event. Somebody commented to me just how professional it was, about just how we got all our stuff in, got all our stuff out, entirely smoothly and safely and well. So nobody should be in any doubts that this is a completely professionally arranged organisation and a professionally arranged event, which is done carefully in association with the authorities. You're the man that does a lot of that, and so it's going to be a great.
The thing is, Alistair, I mean, we enjoy it. I mean, we put all our effort into these events because not only are we doing it, political convictions, of course, but we actually enjoy doing it. And if you enjoy doing something, the chances are you'll probably do it well. So I think that also is an element of it. And I'm sure people sense that we're going along there not just because we're there to the opposition, it's just as simple as that, but we're there because we actually enjoy what we're doing, and we hope that we're good at it, or we're getting better all the time.
Yes. So all round, thumbs up for a great day there, and thanks to everybody who came on. Now, Max, What are your thoughts? Because you're quite a political thinker when it comes to the reality of the world. What are your thoughts on the British elections in general, not just in Scotland, but throughout the rest of the UK? Let's start with Scotland, for example. What are your immediate thoughts on that?
Well, it seemed to me, I mean, if you, objectively looking at the results of the election, it would seem as if the SNP and their supporters are really treading water. The SNP gained an extra seat. The Greens gained an extra 2 seats. And the Conservatives, I think, remained pretty much as they were. So really, not an awful lot exciting happening there. Of course, the SNP are trying to big it all up. They're good at propaganda, I have to give them that. But the reality is that not a lot of change in Scotland. In the UK as a whole, I think Boris Johnson has strengthened. These results that he got in England were definitely strengthening his position. And Labour have really fallen back. They seem to be going the same way as they went in Scotland, to be quite honest. They've got a leader who looks, he's good looking, but he doesn't seem to have any real charisma or presence. He's a bit of a kind of a hollow, empty vessel. But anyway, for the time being, Johnson has been strengthened. That's good for us, I would say. It will give him confidence to face off Sturgeon, because he's strengthened, whereas Sturgeon has remained the same, treading water. So I think, at least from that perspective, we can give some cautious cause for optimism.
That's a good point. That's a good point. The extent to which his position has been strengthened and Sturgeon has, I like that phrase that you used, treading water. That's really what it is. It's almost like she's reached the high point of her vote, and even to the extent of trying to gerrymander the electorate by giving the vote to basically everybody she can possibly think of. She's still not really moved forward in any significant sense. And where we are at the moment is that we're basically 50% of the country approximately, or at least those who bother to vote. Because the real winners here were, again, the majority of Scotland that doesn't bother to vote, or at least 37% of Scotland doesn't want to vote this time. This is the highest turnout that we've ever had. And it's not particularly high, 63%. It's the highest turnout we've ever had at any Scottish election since 1999. And still, it still doesn't make much difference to her at all. So she is treading water. And Boris Johnson, whatever one may think of him, he is the British Prime Minister, and he does have the perfect right and duty and responsibility to say to her, no, you're not going to break up the United Kingdom on my watch. Because
the other thing is you could extrapolate from that in terms of a referendum and say, well, if nothing much has really changed in terms of the makeup of the Scottish Parliament, that would maybe suggest that the electorate would probably vote 45% for, 55% against. If there were another referendum, which, I mean, of course, you and I agree there shouldn't be. But if there were, it would tend to suggest that the things haven't really changed much in that respect.
Yes.
I don't know what you think about that.
I do believe that nothing much has changed in that respect, which is a pity in a way, because it should have moved much further to our view. You know, it should have moved much further for the Union.
The thing is, I mean, the principal opposition to the SNP, the Conservative Party in Scotland, and they need to be a little bit more aggressive. I think one of the mistakes that I personally think they made was in their leaflet, where they didn't promote their leader in Scotland, Ross, enough. They seem to be promoting Davidson over Ross. The photograph of Davidson was large. The photograph of Ross was small. He appeared to be a subordinate figure. Now, why would you do that? I mean, Keir Starmer have a photograph of Jeremy Corbyn, enlarged on their leaflet, and Starmer in the top left-hand corner or something. No, of course not. So why did the Conservatives do that in Scotland?
Good point. They maybe thought that there was some sort of electoral advantage to doing that. They must have thought that, but quite why, I don't know. But certainly what needs to happen, Andrew Neil also was suggesting this, is that we've now got at least 2 or 3 years of time. The next big thing will be the British general election, which is to be held on 2nd of May 2024. So that's 3 years away. Okay, now you can be sure that at that election, all the same arguments that we've heard are going to come out again. So by that time, Boris Johnson had really better have been working with his colleagues to really strengthen the Union and to really put the point over that as British Prime Minister, he has the perfect right, duty and responsibility to defend the Union and not to risk it unnecessarily in these crazy referendum innovations that they get up to.
And also, I mean, Boris Johnson really ought to be visiting Scotland a bit more and asserting himself up here. I mean, he's a big character. He's got charisma. Sturgeon is really more opposition than Starmer in many respects. So it'd be good if he came up here and really made a presence a bit more frequently.
Yes, absolutely.
And not be shy about meeting the general public. Not have these sort of protected lightning visits where he has security and then he runs away again. I mean, we want him up here a bit more frequently, visiting the general public and speaking to them openly.
Yes.
Taking a few risks, in other words.
Yes. Well, I remember back at the start of last year when in 2021, January 2020, we did invite him to come and stand with us on our thin red line as the Scottish nationalists were having a march past. And he actually wrote back and said, thank you for your invite, but we'll decline for now, which sort of left it open that he might do it again. And, we'd be open to that if he wanted to to use our platform to get his point across. Not that he is
the Prime Minister of our country. So we want to see him up here. He should be
here. Absolutely.
Incidentally, Alistair, you mentioned earlier on Independent Green Voice, and I'd like to congratulate you on how well you did with the party and the support that we got, and you as principal candidate, of course, in Glasgow, getting 2,210 votes. That was an excellent result. And I mean, conservation is something that you and I and John Robertson, who stood in Central, we're very supportive of that. And I know that you personally have been out doing your own one-man clean-up act around your area, and you bagged God knows how many bags of rubbish.
Hundreds of black bags of rubbish.
Yeah. I mean, I've been involved in similar activities in my area, and years ago in the 1980s, I was on the committee of the Kelvin clean-up, hauling shopping trolleys, etc., out of the Kelvin, and that was good. And I've been involved with other conservation organisations since then. So it was good. It was a privilege to be able to stand for a party that stands for these sort of issues, and particularly local. Local was one of the words that you had on the description on the ballot paper, and it's true. It is local because you have literally gone out locally cleaning up your area, as I have done.
Yes.
And we've actually physically done that. We can prove that we do actually care about these things. And as conservatives, I mean, basically we're conservative minded with a small c, and a traditionalist and patriots. We want to keep our country in good condition, and we want to look after the environment, and we're genuinely ecologically minded. So,
absolutely. And we had 5 candidates standing in 5 of the 8 regions, and we took approximately 10,000 votes throughout Scotland, throughout those 5 regions. It worked out an average of 1,952 votes per region, which is is a good showing for a party that the mainstream media just chose to completely ignore.
Yes.
And it was a party that's, I established it back in March 2003, just a few months after the Scottish Green Party established their party. They established in April 2001, so it was less than 2 years later I established Independent Green Voice. So it's been around for a while, and I've stood for it several times. 2003, 2000, and then the general election following that, then the Scottish election following that. So, and also a council seat as well. So we've been around for a while, and we've got a lot on our plate. Of course, it's
yes.
But we did and have developed a pretty extensive, not just manifesto, but ideology as well, which is a true ecological ideology, unlike the present Scottish Green Party, which is just basically...
The present Scottish Green Party, it's not what it says on the side of the tin. I mean, when people vote for that party, they're not voting for the jolly green giant, they're voting for some bitter, twisted little green midget inside the tin. That's the reality of what they get. They're not, and
the flower pot
to be honest, they're not. The ecological issues take a subordinate place. That party,
yes.
They're really diehard Marxists.
Yeah, that's right. Anybody who unwittingly votes for the Scottish so-called Green Party is being misled into voting to break up the Union. They're being misled into voting for a party which is overtly anti-British, it's overtly Republican, and it will use your green vote in order to promote separation and the destruction of the United Kingdom. And it shouldn't do that as an ecological party. It should stay away from those highly contentious, dangerous issues. But it really just promotes it. And so they have no right to call themselves the Scottish Green Party when they're really just a party of, a separatist party, which is obsessed with these strange politically correct concepts.
Yes. Well, I mean, there's a reason why they're known as watermelons. You know, they're green on the outside, red on the inside. But a lot of people will vote for that party thinking that they are voting for an ecological position. When they're being very seriously misled. I mean, I know people who voted for the Green Party. I may even have voted for them myself at one time. I was, quite so clued up, and it's very deceptive. Very deceptive indeed.
Yeah, and especially they appeal to sort of young people, first-time voters, people who don't want to get into the argy-bargy of whether they're a Tory or Labour. So they'll be like, "Oh yeah, Green, I like that sort of thing, so I'll vote for them." But what the Scottish Green Party is, it's like a gateway drug. So you vote for it because you think you care for the environment, but you're actually being introduced to really dangerous concepts and bad ideas about separating the United Kingdom and destroying the United Kingdom. So, you go in there and you're voting and getting drawn into something that you care about, which is maybe saving the environment.
Yeah. But the other thing, I mean, this saving the environment thing, global warming, carbon footprints, these are all nebulous theories and ideas that are unproven. And it's easy to kind of spin all that stuff, and it sounds good in a few sound bites. But for us, we like to see results, and results, for example, that I mentioned earlier, you and I picking up litter in our local area, that's a concrete result. Hauling shopping trolleys out of the Kelvin's a concrete result. And some of our proposals for improving the conservation of the marine environment, particularly, would produce concrete results. Fishing limits, the use of synthetic fishing tackle, which we would like to have replaced if possible with more environmentally sensitive equipment, and that kind of thing, and marine reserves and all these sort of things. Fish farming, a review of fish farming, and the effects that has on the environment. All these are achievable things. They're not nebulous ideas that are really beyond the control of our country, apart from anything else.
Good point, Max. That's our time is up now, and right. I'm going to say goodbye. Thanks very much for your thoughts. We'll have you back in and we can talk about this particular area because it's something I'm very interested in myself. Okay.
Righto, Alistair.
Take care. Thanks very much.
Pleasure. Bye.
Bye. There we go, folks. Thanks to our wonderful guest, Max, who was also a candidate for Independent Green Voice at the Scottish election last week. And Richard's saying the picture is fixed now. Good. Catherine is saying, thanks, Max. Thank you, Catherine. Tommy says, thanks, Max. Excellent points again. Good stuff. Thanks to this morning's guest, Max Dunbar. And Stephen says, you've spoken more about green issues in 5 minutes than the Greens did in all those TV debates. Well, isn't that for certain? That's for sure. Well, it's something that's very close to my heart, and I realised long ago that the Scottish Green Party was heading in the wrong direction as a consequence of a particular leader who was taking it in one particular way. We know who that was, of course. And so I realised that an alternative, a proper ecological party would have to be established. And as I say, I established that back in 2003 and did a lot of work. And there's a lot of stuff in the IGV that's very, very distinct from the Scottish Greens, including our commitment to freedom of speech and including our commitment to what we call economic democracy or monetary reform, which is something that the Scottish Greens never wanted to touch, even though they were made aware of it many, many times by myself and others. So IGV led the way in that. Now, we had a competition there to see who won the tin of jelly beans, and let me tell you who the winner is, and we'll see. Well, we do have a winner, and let me bring up the winner now. As always, people fired in messages and fired in the answer, and so you all got it within a few seconds of each other. But the person who won, and let me just write this person's name up. The person who won was Robert Cairns. Congratulations, Robert, the winner of this tin of jelly beans. The question was, in which Italian town was Florence Nightingale born? And the answer was Florence, hence her Christian name. So, Robert, if you can send us by that email, if you send us in your address, and we'll get that tin off to you today. So congratulations to you for that, Robert. Tommy says, well done, Robert. Debbie says, congrats, Robert. Stephen says, well done, Robert. Twigman says, brilliant, Robert. Richard says, congratulations, Robert. And Catherine says, congrats, Robert. So it just remains for us to say, congratulations, Robert, to this week's winner. Well done. Good stuff. Yeah, folks, please do, if you're watching on Twitter, please retweet this with a positive comment, like a quote tweet. If you retweet us with a quote tweet, then we can retweet you to over 26,000 people. Talking about thousands of people, yesterday our Facebook page passed the 35,000 followers mark, which is really, really good. And so I want to thank the Facebook team for what they do to keep our Facebook page a professional and intelligent environment for people, and also our Twitter team as well for what they do to keep Twitter right up there Twigman says, really love your work and message, Alistair, and at a force for good. Keep it up. We certainly will, sir. We certainly will keep it up. Definitely. We're in this for the long term. You know, we're already figuring out what we're going to be saying at the British general election in 2024, and then there's the Scottish election in 2026. We will be here for that, believe us. We will be here for that. We're in this for the long haul. It's not like we're ever going to give up. Okay, we're going to be in this for the long haul. So you know, if you invest your emotion and your energy and your time and any donations, you know it's going to be well spent. It's going to be time and energy and money well spent, because we're in this for the long term, and we've got lots of ideas about how to take this forward. Because what we have to do now is consolidate. That's the phrase, consolidate. The Union is safe. The Union is safe. There's no reason for it to be risked in an unnecessary referendum. Boris Johnson will surely refuse to give one, and he will be correct democratically and morally, because he has to stand up for the right of the United Kingdom to hold together, and for the right of everybody else who is British, wherever they may live in our islands or indeed the world, who want to see the United Kingdom stay together. That rests upon the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. That's his duty, his responsibility, and his right to hold the United Kingdom together. And he's strong enough to do that. So the United Kingdom is safe, at least until the next British general election. That's for certain. And that's how the British state is held together. It's held together at the level of the regular British general elections, when people vote for representatives to go to the British Parliament to represent them and their constituents, and indeed all of the United Kingdom. It's at that level that the British state is held together, at the British parliamentary level, not actually at the devolved levels. And that's been long understood by those of us who understand the British Constitution, but many commentators don't properly understand the British Constitution. Many academics don't, and many people who get interviewed by the mass media don't understand it either. And that's one way that you can psychically protect yourself, is to switch off the mass media, because the mass media will have it in now for the United Kingdom. And we've been seeing that recently, the extent to which the BBC pushes the separatist people. So a good way of defending yourself psychically is simply to switch off the news when they start their anti-British agenda, and come in and watch some common sense here at A Force for Good. Sandra says, enjoy the sweeties, Robert. And Robert says, thank you, the daughter will love them. Well, give a very best to you and your family, Robert. Catherine says, thanks, Alistair and team. Well, thank you. Thank you, Catherine. Folks, it's the bottom of the hour. We'll be here next Wednesday at 10:30. Please do tune in then. We'll have a guest as well. And if you've any ideas of who would like to appear, please do tell us and we'll approach that person. Okay, folks, it just remains for me to say thank you very much for watching. God bless the United Kingdom, and God save the Queen. See you next week.